So according to this questionnaire, we have almost 50% of you say that you will start with the diagram. Okay, and then we have almost 25% each write the procedure and then write the analysis. Okay, that is about question 1. Okay. All right, I will give my comment later. We're going to discuss this particular question. I'm going to send you this in the chat box. Okay, so can you download this question in the chat box? Right, just another reminder, please switch on your camera. Otherwise, I do not know who am I talking to. Now, in the chat box, I want you to also let me know which is the hardest question between question 1 and question 2. Which one is the difficult one? Can you maybe type up in the chat box? There are 2 questions. Right? Please type out. Don't type out as a direct message. Oh, many of you all are stating question 1. Okay, good. Excellent. Now, so that's the reason I'm going to only discuss question 1 today. Okay, you're right. Question 1 is where most students find difficult to answer compared to question 2. Question 2 is quite straightforward. You're given data, right? Question 2, you're given data, and then you just analyze the data, draw the graph, and then get the gradient and so on. This one is that if, let's say, you do well, your chances of you getting 15 out of 15 is there. However, question 2 is the part where you will find it difficult. So you have 2 questions here, right? So the total mark is 30. So you have question 1, 15 marks. And then you have question 2, also 15 marks. So here, if you don't do any mistake, right, chances of you getting around 15 out of 15 is there. But the first question is the one a lot of or most students find it challenging. Okay, and also if you read the past paper examiner report, you'll find that this is where the students don't score much. Most of the time, they only score maybe 7 to 9. Okay, as an average score. Right, whereas the average score for question 2 can be around 13, 11 to 13. But if you practice well, you can score 14 to 15. What is the reason students not able to score? Okay, so when I gave this paper as a practice to my students, whether for trial exam or just before their final exam, so I noticed there are a few things. Okay, there are few things where unable them to score. Is because the main reason is that you start to answer these questions. Okay, all these questions, you start to answer this question. Right, from here onwards, you start to answer. I mean, of course, that is what the question is asking for. Just to plan a laboratory experiment, draw a diagram. Of course, that's what we need to do. But if you start doing or answer according to this sequence and only answer what is stated here, you may only get a very minimum mark. When I say minimum mark, most probably around 7 to 9. Okay, which seems to be the average score mark of most of the candidates. So if you want to score higher mark, how do we go about it? Okay, and then according to the poll just now, can I see whether I can get, if you look at the poll, the question here, most of them say draw the diagram first. Okay, so the problem is that when you start to draw the diagram first, what are you planning to draw? Because you haven't planned the experiment. You do not know how the experiment is going to look like at the end, because you're going to start writing. Okay, so what I did is that I told my students, don't draw the diagram. Okay, start writing. Right, start to write first. After you finish writing, then you draw the diagram. Okay, with that, I notice students make less mistake in the drawing. Number two, whatever they draw, it have a very good reflection with the write-up. Okay, and then let's say now there's always this problem. Okay, I notice that students erase the diagram, redraw again, or maybe they cancel that, cancel this, so the diagram look a bit how untidy. All right, bear in mind is that the diagram is the first thing the examiner is going to look at. Right, and that's going to give a good impression. If the diagram is good, it's going to give a good impression to the examiner. They know, okay, this student know about what he or she is doing. So draw the diagram after you write up. Okay, now the other thing also is that before you write up, it's important to do some planning. Okay, because this is a very important question and you'd want to score as high as possible, and it's a challenging question. Okay, so for that, what we're going to do is that I'm going to come up with a method. All right, how you're going to start writing. So if you notice in paper, in the trial exam, you were given a scribbling paper. Okay, so most of the time I notice for this paper, students don't use the scribbling paper, they hand back a blank scribbling paper. So this is where I'm going to teach you how to use the scribbling paper so that you have kind of like a checklist, all the points written for you to do the write-up. And this shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. Because if you do this, your write-up becomes much more faster. You can write very fast, probably another 10 minutes. Okay. All right. So what you need to have is that on the scribbling paper, right? We're going to write, we're going to draw a simple table. I'm going to just show you, but it's not necessary for you to draw a table, this table with a ruler and a pencil and whatever, as long you have these points, right? So we have the variable, we have the procedure. So the procedure, you have the measuring tool. Then we have the measuring technique. Okay, this comes under procedure. All right. Then we have a very important category of mark, which is the additional details. And then analysis. Then you have safety. So these are the category of marks given according to the mark scheme. We have the variable, the procedure, additional detail, analysis, and safety. All right. So like what I say, you no need to actually draw the table like this. As long as you have all these points, you have it on the scribbling paper and for you to put up the note. So the variables, so what are the variables? Or how many variables are there? Can someone type it out? Fantastic. 3, yes. So we have the independent. Okay. We have the independent. We're going to write like this. Then we have the dependent. All right. And we have the constant. So these are the 3. Okay. Now, this is where the trick comes in. Most of the students are going to write independent, dependent, constant. You're going to write only one constant. But actually, there are 3. You should write at least 3 constants. If there are more, then you can write more. Okay. Now, let's look at the marks given for all these category according to the latest mark scheme. So according to the latest mark scheme, variables carry only 2 marks. Procedure carry 4 marks. Okay. This carry 4 marks. Analysis carried only 3 marks. 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and for your information, additional detail carries the most mark, and this is the mark where students fail to obtain. Okay, most of the time students only concentrate variable, procedure, diagram. They want to get the diagram as best they can, right? You're just drawing a diagram. You're not drawing a portrait of yourself. Okay, right? So the diagram only carries 1 mark. So that can wait, right? So they don't seem, most of the time, they don't seem to pay attention to additional detail and analysis. Okay, so now you have laid out all these plans. So this should take about 1-2 minutes for you to write down. Should take, by practice, it should take about 1 minute. Okay, right? You no need, like what I said, no need to draw a perfect table because you're going to throw away the paper anyway. It's just for your checklist. This is going to be a checklist as long as you have all these points written, which I'm going to show you how. Okay, let's look at the question now. Okay, look at the question. See what is it about. So we have a trolley with a magnet attached and placed on a thin steel sheet as shown on figure 1.1. So we have a trolley, we have a magnet and a steel sheet. That means the magnet, it seems to be going to get attracted to the steel sheet, and then that's going to influence the speed of the motion of the trolley along the slope. The angle between the sheet and the bench is theta. The distance from point X to the trolley is D, right? So the trolley is released from the rest and travels down the slope. The velocity V of the trolley is determined by using a light gauge. So here is already mentioned that you need to use a light gauge, okay? And then it is suggested that V is related by given formula. So most of the time they give you a formula which you never seen before. So don't get upset, especially with your teachers. How come my teacher never teach this formula? Well, that is the objective of this question. You're given a question where you're given a formula or an experiment which you never seen before, but you are aware of the apparatus, the tool, the procedures, okay? It's just that you have to use your knowledge to plan the experiment. You no need to know. Most of the time, students get a bit stressed. I notice when I ask my students who don't do well in this question, they said, I do not know anything about the question. How am I supposed to answer? Well, that is the whole idea. Okay, they're going to give you question which you never seen before. All right, formulas which you never seen before. Most of the time, the formula looks scary, like here. Okay, sometimes it is using logarithm, sometimes it uses ln, which you need to use this knowledge. Okay, so given the formula, mp sine theta minus qb equals to mv squared over 2d. M is the mass of the trolley, B is the magnetic flux density, P and Q are constants. So you need to plan an experiment to test the relationship between V and theta. Okay, now, how would you start doing this question? Okay, you all have the question, right? Already sent to you, right? Anyone don't have the question paper? Please check. Okay, so let me ask you now, you have wrote all these plan out. Okay, how would you start answering? How would you start filling up? Okay, you can answer in the chat box. How would you answer these? Would you start writing the variables? Start with the procedure. Identify the variables. Okay, one of your friends said. Send me a direct message so the others won't able to see. Some more, anyone else? Start writing with the variables and way to measure all, okay? Now, how would you know what are the variables? How would you know the variables? Here they only said the relationship between V and theta. Okay. And the variables include the constants. So you should know to identify the independent, the dependent, as well the constant. So however, the formula is not arranged properly. So sometimes you might make a mistake identifying the wrong constants, the wrong variables. So my suggestion is that you fill up the analysis first. You fill it up, the analysis, and then the variables, and then the procedures. Okay. So let's look at the analysis. You are given the formula MP sine theta minus QB equals to MV squared over 2D. This is the formula given. Okay, MP sine theta minus QB equals to MV squared over 2D. This is the formula given. So we need to rearrange the equation. Okay, so when you rearrange the equation, right, you will get V squared equals to 2BP sine theta minus 2DQB over M. This is what you get. All right. Please check, correct or not? So I'm putting the V on the left-hand side of the equation to compare with Y equals to MX plus C. All right, these two equations are compared. All right, and then I can plan out, or I can show the expected graph. So the expected graph, if I plot V squared against sine theta, I will get a graph which will look like something like this, where the gradient M, okay, or just put gradient because I already have M here. So I'm just going to put gradient. Gradient is going to be 2dp. Okay. And in the question here, they ask you to explain how your result is used to determine the values of P and Q. All right. So P is equals to the gradient over 2D. Okay, next, y-intercept C is equals to negative 2D QB over M. And here, they ask you to find out the value of Q. Okay, therefore, Q is equals to negative MC over 2BD. Okay. Right. And how would you know that this experiment, that when you are planning out this experiment, okay, the purpose of this question is that to find out whether you have the scientific skill to write an experimental procedure or scientific paper. That means you are telling another person that how would you conduct this experiment and what is the expected results. So this is the expected results. And if this experiment is done carefully, then a statement should be written here is that relationship is valid if a straight line is obtained. Okay, you cannot say the graph is going through the origin because it's not. Okay, all right, so it's just like that. Or if you're not sure about this statement, you can say relationship is valid if the above graph is obtained. You can write it below here. Now, for your information, how many marks I awarded? Okay, so number one, the marks, if you state that this graph is plotted, 1 mark, it comes under A1 analysis, A1, A1, and this is under additional detail, D1 mark. So you get 3 marks and plus 1. Now, when you write all these analyses, you have a better perception on the variable. So in this case, the variable, independent variable, will be the angle theta. The dependent will be the speed v. So what are the constants? So over here, you notice the constant, there are 2d here. So the d. Okay, other than that, in the equation, we have the mass m of the trolley. And then we also have the B, magnetic field strength. Okay, B. So these are the 3 constants. Okay, now once you have identified all these, right? Now we can look at the tools. So in order to measure the angle, okay, so we're going to measure the angle over here. All right. So what is the appropriate tool to measure the angle? Protractor, yes. Okay, so some of y'all say protractor. Okay, that's good. Protractor is good, right? So we can say measuring tool is protractor. So measuring tool, you can say protractor. Another method, right, is using trigo. When you're going to use protractor, make sure you use a large protractor because you're going to measure the angle. Is going to be big, right? I mean, not the angle, I mean the elevation, the base, you know. So you have to make sure the protractor is a large protractor. Okay, and this must be shown in the diagram. How do you going to place it, where you're going to place it, and how you're going to take the angle. If you're going to use trigonometry, then you need to show also in the diagram, okay, this is theta, this is the height, this is the distance from here to here, and then the formula that you're going to use. Okay, this all comes under additional detail. Okay, next, how do you measure the speed? So here it's already mentioned you're going to use a light gauge. Now, the thing is that light gauge is not a device that gives you data. Light gauge is a sensor. Okay, example, Geiger-Müller tube is a sensor. Hall probe is a sensor. Right? You need to connect to another device for you to make measurement. Like light gauge must be connected to a data logger or a timer to measure the time. Okay, so this must be mentioned. Right? So this must be mentioned. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the mark. And then the formula V equals to distance over the time. How do you going to measure the D? Over here, the D, meter rule. Okay, use a meter rule. So this must be mentioned. This must, because it is from here. And then the time. And then you need to also repeat the reading or the measurement. This must be mentioned. Okay, because it's involving time, and this could be a very fast motion object. So you have to actually measure the time, and then you have to repeat. Okay. All right. What else missing? Mass of the trolley. All right. Going to use electronic balance. Okay. Hall probe. Hall probe. This is where you're going to have to explain further about Hall probe. Hall probe is not just going to place there and then you're going to measure. You need to rotate Hall probe until a maximum reading is obtained. Okay. So this all must be mentioned. All right. So let's look at the marks given. So we have all these written. Okay. We have all these written. Okay. Let's see now the angle. This carries 1 mark, P1, and constant, this carries 1 mark. So 2 marks we have in our hand. 4 marks, diagram, 1 mark. Okay. Diagram is always 1 mark. I'll explain about the diagram later on. All right. So where the other 3 marks goes for, okay, the use of protractor or the method of trigonometry must be explained. We get 1 mark here. Light gate with data logger. Okay. M1. Right. Okay, that must be mentioned. And then the formula, the formula that is used, M1, must be mentioned as well. How do you find out the speed? Okay, so this carries mark. So 1, 2, 3, and then diagram carries 1 mark. Now the diagram, there are some important features you need to know. Number 1 is you must draw using a pencil. Okay. Number 2, labeled. Okay, labeled. And then it must be on a table or surface. Don't let it hanging. Right? Don't let the apparatus hanging in the air. And the most important is workable. All right? When you look at the diagram must appear something like you are another student, okay, another person, when they read your experiment, your procedure, they're able to follow the diagram, they're able to assemble the diagram and able to get the results that you suggested. So your diagram must be workable. That's the reason I'm telling you to draw the diagram after you write the procedure. Okay, so that's diagram. Okay, that is M. Additional detail 6 mark. Where does it go? Okay, this, either one of these, or if you write both, you get this mark. We already have here 1 mark. Okay, the use of this formula to find out the angle, another 1 mark. Okay, explanation about the Hall probe, how do you measure, another 1 mark. Repetition of the reading, 1 mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we are also about safety, we haven't mentioned. So what is the safety thing in this experiment? What is the the important precaution that we have to take in this experiment? Look at the experiment. What do you think? Can write in the chat, type out in the chat. Any idea? Yes, one of your friends said trolley might be too fast. Okay, because the trolley is now moving from the top of the slope. So you need to have a method of slowing down or stopping the trolley. Okay, right? So you must explain method to stop the trolley at the bottom of the slope. Okay, so perhaps you can use a cushion or something like a block, right? A cushion or something to stop the trolley. A sand tray also can, okay, yes, one of your friends suggested put a sand tray, also can, yes. So this carries another mark. You can write as many additional detail you can. In this experiment, there are actually many additional details you can explain about that, right? Methods of making the slope. How do you put the slope higher? You can use like blocks of wood. All right, that also need to be mentioned. How do you make the slope? Because you can draw the diagram and then you can explain. That also carries mark. So when you have written all these, okay, but I mean, we are having discussion. We are taking more than 20 or 30 minutes to discuss about these. But if you practice this, okay, at least you try to take at least 2 or 3 past paper 5, and you practice writing only these, okay, and then after that you start writing, right? You start writing point by point. How do you start write? Is basically you can start writing on this, and then you start to write the procedure, or you can write this way, like this, okay? Then you go by constant, one by one, go like this. One paragraph, one paragraph, one paragraph, and then analysis, okay? And then safety at the end, also can. There's no particular format because this is how they're going to mark. When they read the statement, they're going to give you mark according to the code, M1, M2, P1, D1, and so on. That's how they're going to give the mark, okay? So there's no any particular procedure. So you have all these points. The most important is that you have fill up, okay? If you fill up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, you have 12 column, analysis and safety. You already have 13 columns already filled up. Then you have all the points. Okay, but like what I said, it's not necessary for you to draw this beautiful table and filling up. That will take some time. You just sketch it out, very simple, on the scribbling paper. Start writing in a point system, so you have enough point. Each point carries mark. Okay, any question? Q&A. Any question you want to ask? Okay, one of your friend asked a very good question. This is also some of the question my students ask. Okay, what if you don't understand the question? Okay, what if you don't understand the question?